There has to be a point in your money story, if you do all this hard work, where you can enjoy it, right? Whether that is buying a car off of an app on your phone that you've always wanted, or working less. What's the payoff? Because otherwise, working hard to work hard, that's a tough sell.
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be some payoff down the road.
Welcome to the Military Money Manual Podcast, where every episode is all about achieving financial independence in the military faster than before. We believe personal finance shouldn't be boring or intimidating. Building wealth can be simple, and financial freedom is the ultimate financial goal. Now, here's your hosts, Spencer and Jamie.
Have you ever dreamed of quitting your job that you hate and doing something you love on your own schedule? Well, today we have a great guest, Andy Hill from the super popular marriagekidsandmoney.com that you've probably seen on Instagram or YouTube, where he helps listeners strengthen their family tree and live financially free. More importantly, he's a super genuine and great guy who taught us about building generational wealth, strategies for money for parents, how he paid off his mortgage early and why. And my favorite part of our conversation, we talked about Coast-Fi, where Andy and his wife cut back on their retirement savings because they had enough saved. They now both work part-time in jobs that they love doing, and they fund their lifestyle off those part-time jobs while their retirement savings is covered with what they've already invested. We also talked with Andy about how that model of Coast-Fi or Coast Financial Independence really balances the financial freedom concepts that some of us get obsessed about while enjoying life and your passion a little bit more than average financial independence conversations. Andy's advice and personal finance experience have been featured in major media outlets like CNBC, Forbes, MarketWatch, Kiplinger's Personal Finance, and NBC News. With millions of podcast downloads and video views, Andy's message of family financial empowerment has really resonated with listeners, readers, and viewers across the world. When he's not talking money, Andy enjoys being a soccer dad, singing karaoke with his wife, and relaxing on his hammock. I'm confident that you'll smile a time or two and will love this conversation today with Andy Hill. Andy, thanks so much for joining us today. We're very excited to have you on the show here live from FINCON in New Orleans.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it. Thank you, Spencer.
Our military community loves talking about families. They love talking about finances, and they love talking about marriage. And in fact, this might be a really big compliment. But I told Spencer when I first found your show a few years ago that if I had started a podcast first, it would have been those three topics. So I'm a big fan, very excited to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's all I think about. So that's why I had to name it those three things. So
the military community is very diverse, lots of challenges associated with it. And sometimes it feels like a struggle just to survive.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to transition to thinking about generational wealth. So where do we even start with a topic that seems as big as that?
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem like a really big statement, or even just the two words together, generational and wealth. It almost feels so overwhelming that people just stop. And they're like, that's not for me. But I think we can change the definition of generational wealth, as opposed to it being maybe what we think of it as piles and piles of money and
like
millions.
Donald Duck style.
Yeah, I think we all grow up with Scrooge McDuck, dump it in the thing. I think more along the lines of wealth of knowledge, because honestly, it's going to be a lot easier for you to provide generational wealth for your family through knowledge that they gain and the experience that they gain and the independence that they gain than it is for you to start saving when they're 0 years old until they're 60 and then you'll solve all the problem. I think when we provide anybody the knowledge in order to succeed in life, then they're going to be able to earn more, invest more, be able to take care of the problems that they might have, whether it's debt or just any financial struggles they have, because they have the tools to be able to handle that. So I think if we could transfer this conversation as opposed to how many millions can I provide them to how can I provide them the strength and knowledge to be independent little human beings as they go off into the world, I think it's going to be an easier conversation for most everybody, including myself.
Yeah. The founder of Hobby Lobby actually has a conference every year where he gets his kids and his grandkids and all the cousins, everybody together. And I think it's like a 2-day conference, and they have guest speakers come in and they basically teach them how to manage money. And it's part of, I believe that they don't get a dividend from the family company unless they attend the meeting that year.
Wow.
And so I love that idea of transmitting the knowledge down to the next generation. And because even if let's say that you do manage to save millions to gift to the next generation, if they don't have the knowledge, if they don't have the experience, if you didn't talk about money with them at the dining room table. Or one thing that my family did was on family reunions, we would have a Money 101 talk.
Oh, I love that.
It would be, the whole family would gather around. It would be led by one of the grandkids, but the parents and the grandparents would be there to kind of watch and see what we were talking about. And it's basic stuff, right? It's what is a Roth IRA?
Yep.
What is compounding interest? And then the next year we'd expand on it a little bit, right? And talk about, okay, well, how can you increase your income? How can you decrease your expenses? But having those conversations and normalizing families talking about money, I think that's, like you were saying, that's how you build generational wealth.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to this, whether you believe it or not, this idea of the third generation challenge.
Right.
You've probably heard that. And there are some studies that say, oh, this is real. Wealth fades by 70% for the second generation or 90% for the third generation. And there's other people refuting that. Obviously, hey, if you have Rockefeller type money, it lasts, buddy. Don't worry about it. But the point is, it persists in cultures all around the world. The Japanese have a saying about it. The Irish have a saying about it. The Americans have a saying about it. Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations.
Right.
And there's a reason for that, because if we just hand somebody, think about it, anything, lottery winners, you hand people a lot of responsibility and a lot of money, but no knowledge on how to handle that, then it's going to be difficult to handle the thing. I mean, if somebody said to me, hey, Andy, be an astrophysicist, here's all the stuff to be an astrophysicist. Good luck. It's like, I'm not going to do a good job with that,
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think this third generation challenge, whether it's real or not, I think there's a lot of truth to the fact that if you get handed something with no knowledge on how to handle it, it's going to be very difficult for you to be successful.
Do you think that message of transferring the knowledge more than millions in the bank account is what resonates so well with the tens of thousands of people that have kind of joined on the Andy Hill and MKM train over the last couple of years? Because you're just kind of like a normal guy. You're an amazing guy, but you just seem like one of us. Like, you're just a normal person.
I am. The blood is running through here. No. Yeah, I would say that I think maybe it resonates because it's true. I think that the reality of helping our kids build any sort of wealth, I kind of mapped it out, being like, it's going to be a lot easier for us to help give them the wings and then go get the college education to get paid a lot of money to do something somewhere. And then they do the investing because for me to do the investing, that's a smaller piece of this sliced pie that I can do right now between, my house payments and all the things that I have to do to pay for my life. So it just makes more sense to give them more emotional sense. It makes more financial sense for you to give them the wings to fly. Absolutely.
When you talk about 529 plans or saving for your kids, IRAs for them or whatever, how do you balance you and your wife saving for yourself versus saving for your kids' future?
Yeah, anytime we talk about generational wealth or investing for your kids for the future, you first need to talk about putting on your own financial oxygen mask first. This is not a conversation that a lot of families have the privilege to even broach because of, the realities of living, a high inflation environment, being able to, pursue your dreams of home ownership if that's something that you find important to you is difficult to even think about maybe helping your kids get to a college in 18 years or 15 years.
With no debt.
With no debt. I mean, it's those are very privileged conversations. So we must first start with ourselves so that when we're old and gray and we're out of money because we focused on our kids' wealth, we're not knocking on their doors saying, hey, that Roth IRA saved up for you. I'm going to need a little of that because I didn't save up enough for myself. So as we all talk about, there are no retirement loans, but there are student loans if you need to get those, or there are military opportunities where you can serve your country and then, be able to go through school. So there are dozens of options for college, and there are very limited options for a retirement if you don't have enough money to take care of yourself.
So to help teach people about generational wealth, you recently created a course. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what it covers and where people can find that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Make My Kid a Millionaire, and it's focused on 10 steps that help families build generational wealth and happiness for their kids. It's a parent-focused course. It's not for the kids because I don't know how about you guys, but my 10, 11-year-old daughter, she's not listening to me right now, man. She didn't care about anything Dad's saying. In fact, anything that I talk about on my YouTube channel. If it's not gaming related, she thinks I'm not a real YouTuber. So, but no, it's focused on helping families build generational wealth and happiness. And I did it in this 10-step format as an online course because it sort of walks you through the steps, with one of the first one being take care of yourself first, because this generational wealth conversation shouldn't happen until you're feeling at least financial security. I guess that's a good word with it. So if people are interested in checking it out, I've created a freebie, which is essentially just a short snippet of the course for you to take a look at. You can find that at marriagekidsandmoney.com/military-money, marriagekidsandmoney.com/military-money, and then you can take a look at it. And if you decide to go for it, you can learn more about it there.
I think that's a lot of people could benefit just from, even if they're not in a place where they're investing in their kids' wealth, they can still take the knowledge from it and start having those conversations. I think that's the greatest gift that you can pass on to the next generation, right? Is have those open and honest conversations where this is what we've done well. These are some of the mistakes we made. Obviously, you have to make it age appropriate.
Yes.
Sometimes a 10 or 11-year-old isn't going to be quite listening to you. But if you make it so that money is not a taboo subject, and that it's something that they can feel free to talk to you about, and you can demonstrate for them positive money behaviors, then I think that's probably the greatest gift that you can pass down to the next generation.
So you went from working full-time to quitting your job. I think your wife is down to part-time now.
Yeah.
And you've kind of brought this term of Coast Fire into the masses, probably, I would say. What is Coast Fire, if someone's never heard of that, and where do they kind of figure out if they've achieved that? Maybe they already have and they don't even know it. And how do they calculate it if not?
Yeah, I learned about the term or this sort of idea a few years ago from the Pioneers, Jessica and the Pioneers group. Great website, teaching a lot of people about these smart ways of living. I got really into the FIRE community, a few years ago. I got really into a lot of movements, the debt-free movement, the mortgage-free movement, the FIRE movement, and I kind of go crazy. I let me experiment, and my wife gets freaked out, and she's like, "Oh no, what's going to happen now? My fun budget's getting slashed here."
What weird cult are you in
Exactly.
now?
I mean, they all feel a little bit like that, but I kind of really love them. But anyway, as I fell into this, FIRE movement idea, the idea of retiring early or saving and investing so much that you can do nothing in your 30s or 40s. It sounded appealing to me because I had a job that I didn't really like and I was making good money and we're saving about half of it. I'm like, well, that seems like a logical next step. But really what I learned after leaving my job and starting work that I actually really like is that I want to work. I like doing helpful things that provide a purpose and help people on their mission wherever they are. So this idea of Coast Fire is essentially you've saved and invested so much in your retirement accounts that with time and compound interest and no other contributions, it can take you to where you needed to be by the time you retire. Now, if you have a pension or things like that, that makes the conversation even easier for where you are with regard to investing. So it's sort of an epiphany moment. Like if you start to do those calculations and you say, okay, well, if I have, for example, my wife and I did a lot of saving and investing for a while. So around 4 years old, we had about $500,000 saved in our retirement accounts. So we're like, okay, we got about 20, 25 years to retirement. What if we just put nothing in there? Where would that take us with, the rule of 72 or just doubling and seeing where that goes? And we're like, this could be about $2.5 million or $3 million by the time we need this with, real rate of return, factoring inflation and things like that. And then that starts to pick up other questions. You're like, okay, well, if I don't need to invest as much, then do I need to work as much? And if I don't need to work as much, then could I be spending more time with my aging parents? Could I be spending more time with my kids as they're growing older? Could I be spending more time with my wife so I don't get divorced because I'm gone all the time because I'm working crazy hours? And that sort of opened the idea of like, okay, well, if you don't need to invest as much, then maybe you can decrease the amount of hours you're working. So both my wife and I have sort of adopted this part-time work lifestyle. So we both work about 20 to 30 hours a week instead of what we used to do of 40 to 60 hours a week, like a lot of us do, in order to pay for the life we need. So it's sort of a stepping stone for us along the way, because when we started, we had negative $50,000 net worth. We had a lot of debt and we were spending every dime that we had coming in. And then we realized the power of just spending less than you earn and being intentional with where it goes. And so from debt freedom to Coast Fire to mortgage freedom. These sort of just open up doors for you to have more agency with how you live your life. And that's what we like about controlling your money, because then you can control your life.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm hearing you say there is when you front load the savings, you can reduce the amount of hours you're working. And the other thing you can do as well is you might even reduce the amount of savings that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's a position that you can only get into if you've done the work ahead of time. A lot of people just kind of skip and they're like, oh, well, this Coast Fire thing sounds great. I've got, $10K in my Roth IRA. And it's like, run that out though. You're not going to be quite.
Need a little more.
You need a little bit more. You're not going to be good. Or as good as you think you are when you hit.
And I do see the some of the Coast Fire conversation is sometimes happening pretty early in somebody's lifestyle. So they're, hey, I'm 23. I only spend $25,000 a year on my life. I'm Coast Fire. It's like, okay, well, are there other things that you maybe want to be considering in your future? Other people, maybe you want to have kids in the future or something like that might increase those expenses. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mathematical conversation. And when you run the numbers, they've got to be very specific and unique for your situation. It doesn't work for everybody in the same fashion. But I think what I like about it is sort of the emotional, philosophical conversation of not just doing the thing that we think we need to do until we're old and gray, and then we can't do some of the life experiences that we were interested in it earlier. So I think having an open mind with it, and I don't think there's a ton of people talking about it because there's not a lot of financial products to be sold with stopping things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's no money in that.
Right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of money in not having a mortgage. There's not a lot of money in stopping investing. And again, it's everybody's unique situation, but I think it's something that's interesting and people should think about for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, actually sitting down and thinking through how do I want to structure my life?
Yeah.
And how many hours a week do I actually want to be working? And especially when you're in the military, it can get completely out of control. I mean, a lot of times, you're on a 6-month no-notice deployment and you're working 12 hours a day and you're in the wrong time zone, so you only get to see your kids on FaceTime for an hour a day.
Yeah.
And
If you're lucky.
Yeah. And the rest of the time you're just grinding it out in the desert somewhere. And I think when, people can do that for years or even for decades, but at some point, everybody reaches their breaking point.
Yes.
And if you've done the savings and you've done the thinking too, then you can add that flexibility into your life where you say, well, I could retire in the military, I could retire at 20 years. I could be collecting my pension, and maybe I was saving 50% when I was on active duty. So I can live on a 50% pension and I don't need to save any of that anymore because I've already done the savings and I know that my thrift savings plan, the military 401k, is going to keep growing. And so when I get to age 60, I'll have millions in there that I'll be able to pull down.
Yeah. I'd love to ask a question back to you guys about that point. Let's say you got into the military at 20 and then you are able to retire at 40. Is there a sense of I need to continue to work at the same level that I was working because that's what I was used to and what I'm trained to do that is hard to change for retirees?
I think that's definitely where the inertia takes people.
Right.
A lot of times they go from an active duty position into a government civilian position, sometimes doing the exact same job as a federal government services employee. So the inertia is there to keep doing work, and it's easy and it's comfortable. But what's unique about the military, I think, from a lot of other jobs is that you have potentially a 38-year-old with a pension for life, healthcare for life, and they may not need to work full-time ever again between the pension and part-time income or pension and what they have saved. They can draw down with the 4% rule or something like that, where it's a very unique opportunity that our listeners have that a lot of other people in the room don't get to because definitely not at 38 in most career fields.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of military service members just aren't presented with the alternative, the option of having that flexibility and just living off their military pension. I think the inertia, like Jamie said, is to move into that government civilian role and you just keep showing up to work and you're like, well, what am I do now? I guess I'll work another 20 years and collect a federal pension.
Sure.
And, when I'm 60. But if they actually, thought about, well, what are you not doing at 40 because you're working so much that you're not going to be able to do when you turn 60?
Yes.
And I see this with my parents. Hi, Mom and Dad. where they're in their early 60s and they were good savers throughout their life, and they're having difficulty making that switch to the spending phase. Sure. Where they've accumulated this nest egg, and now they're thinking, ooh, we just gotta keep going till 65 so we can get full Social Security, or we just gotta keep going to 70 so we can even get better Social Security. And I try to remind them to have these philosophical conversations, these questions where it's, if you keep working, what are you going to miss out on?
Yeah.
What are you not going to be able to do at 60, or what are you able to do at 60 that you're not going to be able to do at 70?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's life experiences too. Yeah. So my wife and I've been affected by her situation because we're married for 13 years. So a lot of things that she feels or internalizes, I do as well. She had both of her parents die early. I mean, her dad died when he was 45, and her mom died just a few years after she retired, in her early 70s. And those types of things, they could be learning lessons unique for everybody. But I do think about that as sort of, what is the sweet spot then? If we say, hey, I'm 38 and I retired and I don't have to work a lick, or hey, I'm just going to work until my dying day. Is there some hybrid ground that we can find there? Because I think the individual that cannot work at all at 38 might lack a purpose too, that might affect their emotional health, where I'm like, well, I was so needed for 20 years in my career that now I'm not needed at all. And that can have a massive draining effect on you too. So I don't know. I like to advocate for the golden mean of some sort of middle ground. And I think the middle ground might be when you have financial agency and financial security, that working some is good for you. But then also there are so many other pieces of your identity that you can explore, whether that being a better husband, better wife, better son, daughter, become a better athlete, whatever. Maybe you've always wanted to be a musician. These are great times to explore these things. And hey, it might be an ultimate failure. You might get that guitar and be like, man, I didn't touch that after a week. But you tried. You know what I mean? Like these are moments of exploration. So I feel like if we can utilize the time that we all have, it's all the same amount of time we have in a week, to explore other areas that maybe we want to diversify our identity outside of worker, that could be really great for you individual. I think it could be really great for society.
Yeah. And we have a lot of the same issues with the military personnel that culture has in America in general. And a lot of it is just grind and hustle. And it's looked more favorably upon to be a high earner than someone that works part-time but has a great life where they're happy and they're enjoying life. And it's not to say that any one job is going to make you happy, but imagine if someone has a passion and they can take a low-paying part-time job to work in their passion instead of chasing a higher salary every year, or having to work at a dead-end job that they hate for a boss that they hate just because they have to have that amount of salary.
Yeah. It's what I'm exploring right now personally, and there are pros and cons to it. We definitely live in a neighborhood where nobody does what we do, so we look very weird. Like I got a sideways compliment the other day. They're like, "You're the most involved father at this elementary school," and I'm like, "Thank you." But personally, I'm like, I don't know. I have some self-confidence to be like, great. That's what I want to do. I want my kids to remember that, and it makes me feel great. And I hope to encourage other dads to have. I mean, I was definitely the only dude at the PTO meetings. But it was fun. It's, and things change over time. I think that there's growth and change in society, and it's fun to be a part of.
And there's this quote I've seen online a lot where it's, in 10 years or in 20 years, the only people who are going to remember that you worked overtime are your kids and your wife, right? Your spouse. And I just think that's so true, especially in the military, right? Like where we don't get paid overtime. We're salaried, and the expectation is you get the job done no matter how long it takes. And sometimes it's important, right? Yeah. Sometimes we're moving the mission and we're saving lives, or we're implementing national policy, and sometimes we're just
fixing fonts on a PowerPoint.
Yeah, washing the parking lot. So,
I think when we talk about when you're looking back to, I like that point that you're making, Spencer. Is I had a conversation with a hospice doctor, Jordan Grumman. You guys know Jordan, and he talked a lot about regrets at the end of your life, and too often do we hear the major regret of people is that I worked I wish I wouldn't have worked too much. Worked so much.
Yeah.
And oh man, that just, when you have those real conversations with people like that, where it's real people who've lived their lives and then they look back and say, hey, everybody, these are the lessons. That's why we all love history so much, or I like history a lot, because we can look back and say, what did I learn from this? Both the positives and the negatives, so that I can make better informed decisions on my path forward. And those are, oh man, to hear somebody at the end of their life saying, I wish I wouldn't have worked so much, that just gives me an opportunity to say, oh my God, I have that blessing of that knowledge now, because I am 40 and I, God willing, have 60 more years of my life to craft how I want.
One of the hardest things, though, going through life, especially if you stop and you think about these tough questions, though, is finding that balance, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you work hard and you hustle in your 20s and 30s, maybe that gives you the financial security and the financial resources to ease off the gas in your 40s. But what I see so often that happens is people get success after success and they keep climbing that ladder.
Yeah.
And then in their 40s and 50s, they just keep their foot down the gas, and then they get to 60 and they're like, cool, I've got a couple $1 million, but I have no friends.
Right.
No hobbies.
That's where it comes back to values, because it's like, okay, at that moment in time, right or wrong, your value was adulation and monetary reward at work. And so you'd get a lot of attaboys or, compliments where you were. But if you always say, hey, I'm a family man, but the majority of your time and focus is not family man stuff,
Right.
then I don't know. It's right or wrong. We're not pointing fingers, but it's also an opportunity to reflect and say, okay, successful is a definition that you can only
get to
define, right?
Yep.
And it's based on what you define as successful life. And I know a lot in our society, we define success as a big old bank account, whatever, your accreditation at work or your level at work. And depending on who you are, that in the long run, that might not be the most successful.
Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and then we'll be right back to the show.
Hey, Spencer, I got a cousin that just graduated from high school and they're about to start basic training in a few months. Any ideas on a gift I should get him?
Yep, sure do, Jamie. The Military Money Manual, A Practical Guide to Financial Freedom, is a concise, easy to read, and practical guide to your military money. It's the book that I wish someone had handed me on my first day in the military. In the book, I explain the exact money tactics and investing strategies that can enable you to achieve financial independence while serving in the U.S. military. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and my website. It's hardcover, paperback, ebook, Kindle, and audiobook. You can get a special discount using promo code podcast on my website, shop.militarymoneymanual.com. You mentioned marriage there, and marrying the right person for you can be very determinative of whether you achieve success, however you define it. Are there any habits or conversations that you have with your spouse, with your wife about money that you think have either been successful or maybe have not been successful?
Sure. Well, I can start with the not successful ones.
Yeah, great.
So the first thing is we're at a money conference right now.
Right.
And man, was she excited for me to get the heck out of the house. Dude, stop talking to me about money. Go talk to your money friends.
Right.
But that also brings me back to the beginning of portion of our relationship where I would talk to her about the dollars and figures and debt freedom and net worth and financial independence and all these number-focused things, and it would just go right over her head, man. Or not right over her head, but just I don't even care what you're saying. It wasn't her passion.
You're the spreadsheet guy in the relationship.
Yes, I sure am, as you can tell. But once I started to flip the conversation towards the rewards for that work, whether with money being the tool, that's when we would connect a little bit more. So in the beginning of our relationship, we had $50,000 of debt, and I'm like, I think it would be cool if we combined our two incomes, because before it was just me making an income and her making an income. All of a sudden, we're combined, we're making $130,000 together. We're like, whoa, this is awesome. What if we just pretend to live on one of those incomes, because we were just doing that anyway, and we're living together, and then we pay off this debt right away. Yes, half of it is mine, so it's a really good benefit for me. And she was like, why? That sounds like we're gonna, live in a little deprivation for a while. Let's have some fun. We're in our late 20s. Let's enjoy our lives. But then once I flipped the conversation towards, she did not like her job, and she eventually wanted to become a part-time or an eventually stay-at-home mom full-time. Once I flipped the conversation, if we do these things, this will allow us to move toward a life that you are excited about. You do not like your job, things aren't going well, you don't see it progressing in the way. That's when we started to have better conversations about money and things connected a little bit more. Yes, I would still have to do the hard sell on what I like to call the budget party to get together. But I'd bring the pizza, I'd bring the wine, I'd set it all up. She wouldn't have to do a lot of work. I'd just make the couch real comfy. She likes being warm, so I'd get the heater there and the blanket.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, if you need to have this conversation as a couple and you need to, be the leader. And because somebody has to. And it helped.
So $50,000 of debt when you were newlyweds.
Yeah.
What system did you use? How was that journey from newlyweds with debt to debt freedom for you? And that was really a launching pad to where you are now.
Absolutely, yeah. So it started with $50,000. It was about $30,000 of student loans. I decided to go back to get my master's degree. Took on a lot of debt. Didn't really know what I was doing. And it was so available to me, the money, that I just started spending it on things that weren't even school related. I bought my wife's engagement ring.
I know nothing about that. Yeah.
It was so, my knowledge was so poor about it that I took advantage of it and didn't really know what I was doing. So I built up a lot more than I needed to. And then she had a car loan, and combined it was about $50,000. So once we got together and we're married, and then we learned we were going to be parents, this little light bulb switched in my brain where I'm like, went into pop-up protection mode, even though my daughter wasn't even in the world yet. Or I'm like, what can I do to give my daughter the best life? And for me, I always liked money and personal finance stuff. I wasn't the best at it, but I knew that, like Scrooge McDuck, if you got a lot of it, options are open, right?
Yeah.
You swim in the little bank. But so at that point, my mind switched to what can we do to get rid of this debt? Because I know that removing this from our lives will allow us to move in the direction that our family wants to go in. And so we sat down on a monthly basis. We looked over the numbers. A big part of it was moving away from spending all of our money as a newly engaged, newlywed couple, of this honeymoon phase of like, let's go out to the restaurants. Let's go to all the concerts. I was really into concerts.
I love concerts.
Let's go to the bar. Let's have fun with our buddies. To, okay, what can we start saying no to? What can we start being a little bit more thrifty and frugal on that will allow us to essentially live on half of what we have? And given that we were both used to living on about $60,000 or $70,000 individually, it came with time. But some of those conversations were hard in the beginning, like when your group of friends is used to doing the things that you're always used to doing, and you say, hey, actually, we're not going to join you guys for X concert, or we're not going to go out to dinner, we're going to make food at home. They're like, why? What's wrong with you? Things like that. We were able to blame the fact that Nicole was pregnant on some of the lack of going out, which helped in the long run. Yep. But yeah, these constant get-togethers, we would do it at least once a month, where we'd get together, we'd review the numbers, we'd view our progress over time about how the debt was going down. I tried to make it fun by bringing in some, wine and pizza and things like that, and celebrating these moments when we'd go from $50,000 to $40,000 to $30,000, and just make a little moment about it. I'm kind of a goofy guy, so I would get excited about it and make her embarrassed, and she laughed at me or with me. It's one of those.
I think I know which one.
Maybe no.
Exactly. But anyway, I think it's important to celebrate those small victories, because what you're doing is you're moving towards that life that you want to have. And yes, for me, it's numbers focused, because I like seeing the progress of those numbers. But for her, she was able to see those financial benefits because she went from part-time when our daughter was born, went to part-time. And then when our son came into the world just 2 years after that, she was able to go full-time stay-at-home mom with these moves that we were making. And that really made a big difference in our entire family emotional wealth.
So after you got out of debt with the consumer debt, you ended up paying off your mortgage earlier. You mentioned mortgage freedom earlier. Was that a math decision, or what drove you to that? Because we have military families that own houses sometimes all over the country, and they've moved away and like, I don't know what to do with this. Should I keep it as a rental? And the conversation becomes even more complicated when you own multiple. When you're just talking about your own primary residence, it's not quite always black and white either, though.
Yeah. For me, it was both a financial and an emotional decision. I bought my first home in 2004 in Metro Detroit for about $200,000. And after about 4 or 5 years, we started to get into this Great Recession area. And all of a sudden, my home is now valued at $100,000. and I bought it for $200, and my mortgage was what, $180,000. So I owed more on the home than it was valued.
Yeah.
And that was one of those moments where I'm like, I thought I was doing the right thing. I don't like this position. I feel like I'm owned by this home. And it really hurt. And I also bought more house than I should have at my age, didn't realize all the costs that come with homeownership outside of your mortgage. You know, you got to furnish the place, you got to pay the bills, you got to fix the roof, you got to fix this furnace. I'm 22, 23 years old. I don't know what I'm doing. I got to pay all these people to fix it. I don't know if they're swindling me or not. I ended up spending so much on that house that I became super, super life poor, you know, where it's like, okay, man, I could barely make all the payments that I need to do. So my first bout of homeownership was emotionally draining. So when my wife, and we were pregnant with our second child, she's like, I want to move to a bigger house and move to the suburbs. And I'm like, ooh, I don't even know if I want to do it all over again. But if we do, we're paying this thing off as soon as possible. Let's keep living on 50% of our income and pay this mortgage off in less than 5 years. And then I will do this.
And you did it.
Wow.
And she agreed, and we did that. We kept the budget parties up once a month. We kept throwing as much as we can towards the principal every single month. And in less than 5 years, it was paid off. So that was the emotional side of things. Now, financially, having less expenses in our life, fewer expenses in our life, allowed us to make better life choices that worked well for our situation. It allowed us to just be a single earner income household. She was able to stay at home with the kids, and it opened up more options for us. If we're not paying the mortgage every month, then we've got more money for whatever, investing, going on vacations, working less. Right. I think when we can make some financial moves that allow us to have financial life options, I think that's a win.
The period of sacrifice that you guys made, it's a temporary sacrifice for long-term gain. And we talk about that a lot, especially if you can start early. You make a short-term sacrifice to set yourself up in the long run. And here you are, 40 or young 41, young 40s. You got your whole life ahead of you, and there's nothing dragging you down, not even a mortgage. And I think that's a really powerful example of how temporary sacrifice gets more and more growth, and then now you're not sacrificing. Like, saw you recently brought a brand new car, which isn't something people in the fire community normally do.
Right.
So what brought that about?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, I had this sort of super saver mindset for a really long time. I was starting to build up some money in a taxable brokerage account because I'm like, this will be my fire fund. You know, I can stop working altogether at 45 or 50. But then I started doing work that I really like. And then I'm like, well, why? I don't want to retire early. I like doing something and making money to help people. And so my wife's like, why do you even have that anymore? I'm like, well, it's my early retirement fund. I like coding it there. It's cozy. And she's like, stop it. Just get the car you've been talking about buying for like 2 years with that money and enjoy it. I mean, life's short. Who knows what can happen? You know. And so I did. I bought a new Mustang Mach-E. I love it. It's fun. It's so fast, and my kids like it. And it fits. It's like a hybrid of a family car and like a really fast car. It's really cool. I like it a lot. But you didn't start there. You had to go through the growth and the period of sacrifice to get to that point. Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a big part of it too. And I think it's fun to talk about these things. And but it took a lot of time to get there, and it's worth it though. If you do the work. It can't all be sacrificed forever until you die. There has to be a point in your money story if you do all this hard work where you can enjoy it, right? Whether that is buying a car off of an app on your phone that you've always wanted, or working less. You know, what's the payoff? Because otherwise, working hard to work hard, that's a tough sell.
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be some payoff down the road. And so we're trying to live a little bit of that payoff right now and sort of maximize those family experiences while our kids are young and enjoy it. So
the author of Die With Zero, Bill Perkins, he likes to talk about, or he always asks the question, like, when's the party? Like, he's like, I know you're saving. And actually, his book has, I think it's
great book.
It's been a while since we brought it up.
It has been a couple episodes, but the country where he sells the most copies, besides the U.S., is Japan, which is
very needed.
Which is
their culture.
It is very needed, and that when he goes there and he gives talks and stuff, that's his question, right? He's like, okay, your great grandparents worked very hard, saved and invested. For your grandparents to work very hard, save and invested. For your parents, he's like, when is the party?
Yeah.
Like when, and culturally, that's just not a part of Japanese culture. Kind of in the fire community too, you might have a little bit of that where it's save, and just keep saving, and you never, even if you get to the finish line, and you'll see this. I think Brandon from Mad Fientist and Ramit Sethi has had a couple guests on his fire people on his podcast where they cannot break that saver's mindset and actually go out and buy the nice car.
It's the same reason that we a lot of folks can't stop working at something that they're good at.
Right.
Because it's like, well, I'm good at this. My savings rate. Look at the savings rate.
Yeah.
Or look at the amount that's in here. That's
Right.
incredible.
Right.
But I like the Bill Perkins methodology a lot because I would rather die with zero. I would rather enjoy the best life possible, impact the most people possible within my life. And if I, he has a lot of that conversation in his book about, well, what about the kids? You're going to die with zero, really? I mean, you're not going to leave anything for your kids. I'm going to give them the knowledge and independence so that they can have a rich life.
Right.
And if they need some money along the way while I'm able to party with them and enjoy it, I'm going to take them on a vacation now, or I'm going to help them buy that house that's going to be a quadrillion dollars in 30 years from now. Can you imagine what home values are going to be 30 years from now?
No, hopefully there's a correction sometime in the future.
I was going to say. And we also probably need to jump off the altar of home ownership as being like the holy grail for a lot of people, too.
I'll say in my personal experience, so we bought one condo at my first duty station when I was on active duty. We sold it 3 years later, made a profit through no skill, right? Complete luck and just timing the housing market through sheer luck. And we haven't bought since.
Yeah.
And we're very happy with that.
I was gonna say,
and like renting.
Especially in the military community.
Especially in the military.
It has to be, I believe that homeownership should be a long-term investment, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And I know for some people, having a home is an emotional win for them. So I know that's a big statement, but I think the transaction costs that come with buying and selling a home and the ups and downs, even though it's not as volatile as the stock market, there's still some ups and downs in the housing market, as we're seeing right now. I don't think there's anything wrong with renting, and especially with a career that puts you in a lot of different places in the country or the world.
So for our military families that are listening, maybe some of them are feeling overwhelmed. Maybe they bought a house at a duty station that they couldn't resell. They're overwhelmed with their budget. They just can't get ahead. You work with a lot of families and a lot of couples. What are some maybe one or two top tips you would give someone that's feeling kind of overwhelmed or stressed about their money?
Yeah, I think when we listen to podcasts or we, think about all the things that we need to do for money, it can get overwhelming. It's like, oh, I got to invest, I got to save, I got to do, and then you're like a paralysis. Yeah. I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to go back. I'm going to put on a great Netflix show or something,
Hide in my turtle shell
exactly,
or something.
Right. So I think that, first of all, just give yourself some grace because there's a lot of messages coming at you right now. And realize that a lot of people feel overwhelmed in our country right now with a lot of things that are going on. So just give yourself some grace and just say that happens. And then once you've had some pause, think about what you want out of life first. Not all the things that you're supposed to do or the messages you're hearing even from this podcast. What are the things that you want to do personally that are unique to your situation, that are your values, that feel good to you? Or you could even start with, what are the things that are bringing you stress right now? So it's almost like, what do I want to remove from my life that could be my goal, Sitting down, writing those things down, maybe asking yourself, what don't I have in my life right now that I really want, whether that's peace, stress removal of certain areas, and then start from there. And a lot of financial confidence can come from just starting to build the habit of putting money in the bank. You know how good you feel when you've got a good amount of money in the bank, where it's just like, I have some agency, I have some options, I have some choices, accessible money in the bank, So I think laying out your budget and deciding what's coming in and what's going out, seeing what you can do to provide yourself a little bit of strength and autonomy by spending less than you earn, can start to give you that financial strength and start to put some of that money away so that you can start to get some options in your life and realize you don't need to do all of this right away.
Yeah, Jamie and I were talking earlier about some of the milestones on our own personal financial journeys. And I think for both of us, one of the big ones was becoming debt-free and subtracting that stress from our life. And we didn't really add anything, right? Like I basically got back to zero net worth.
Yep.
I had a little bit of money in the bank, but just knowing that every single dollar that I was going to receive for the rest of my life, unless I chose to go back into debt again, was mine to spend.
Yes.
And that is incredibly powerful, especially if you buy that first car and you're like, well, I guess I just borrow to buy it because that's what everybody else does. Or you graduate college and you're like, I took student loans out because that's what everybody else does. And then you kind of have that epiphany moment where it might be when you get married. It might be when you have your first kid. It might be just, you turn 30 and you realize that, no one's coming to save me. Like I gotta figure this out on my own. And I think that's the moment where you can be like, okay, well, what can I do to improve my situation? And that can be just as simple as, you know what, I'm gonna tally up my debt and I'm gonna start chipping away at it.
I like that, especially for military members too, because depending on your situation, you probably have some sort of pension with your situation. So creating a debt-free life for yourself and then having some money already put away is fantastic.
Okay, Andy, we've really enjoyed having you with us today. Instagram, YouTube, course, can you remind us where to find Andy Hill and Marriage, Kids, and Money?
Yeah, sure. All roads lead to marriagekidsandmoney.com. So if you want to check out our podcast, it's Marriage, Kids, and Money. All these other channels that are mentioned as well. And then again, the course, you can find that at marriagekidsandmoney.com/military-money.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.